Recording in progress.
Um,
Well, hello, Jonathan.
Good day, sir. How do you do?
Oh, it's a lovely, yes. Actually, it is really nice. The weather has not been that bad around here, so I
Nice.
cannot complain too much.
I delivered in the snow yesterday, the day,
Mm.
all day. Um, yeah. Is there anything in particular you have been thinking about? I didn't really have I know we've kind of been like circumambulating a general series of associated ideas, um,
Right.
and such, like throughout our conversations, but I don't know, if you want to anything on your mind
I
recently, or
I mean, I don't nothing in particular. I've been writing a lot. That's sort of what's been consuming a lot of my energy. So I've been at it.
or
I've been
doing
doing my writing stuff, so that's been very good. Um,
nice.
yeah, I actually have you ever talked to Nick, the ship clerk?
Yeah.
No, I've had a couple conversations with him, and one of the things that sort of circled on was this whole idea of um, I called it like the intersection between faith and creativity. Um, and mainly, I think it's maybe more profound for myself, being someone who's like a late life convert.
Mm,
Because like he didn't quite understand what I was saying.
mm.
Because for him, like he always had sort of been a believer or whatnot, so there never was this time where it was separated,
Yeah, I'm trying to
right?
remember.
So
I think we discussed that some last time but I don't quite remember exactly what you were getting at in that regard. Like,
I well, it's sort of related to the writing, right? Um, I hadn't done any writing since becoming a Christian,
mhm.
you know, and so I was looking back
Yeah,
at what I had written in the past, and I'm like, now do I have? I basically I was trying to say like, do I have some kind of responsibility to change my
mhm.
creative outputs to intersect better with my faith, you know? So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah, and I
but
remember
I
last
think I
time.
finally made some pretty big twists on all that. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I remember last time we were talking about like, it's interesting once you kind of have understand to whatever degree, sort of like the Peugeot brothers have provided us, like the kind of understanding of the symbolic lens. Like I remember saying like the problem is less so, or it's like you don't want to be overly intentional about it, like, and because it's also because that kind of ultimately the story would be hearkening to the Christian story, but it's kind of like if you make that just the whole point of the story, then it's like might as well just retell the Bible, So it's an interesting
Yeah, yeah,
opens up a
yeah.
creative space of like kind of the differences and the similarities and not being like over intentional. It's yeah, that's cool. So
Yeah, yeah.
are you still working on like the one like I remember you said you were kind of elaborating a story between books, right? Or like between
Yeah,
writings?
yeah. So I don't know if you did. I'm not sure if you listened to the one that I published on my channel. Um,
I did indeed.
okay, yeah, yeah, that's right. So yeah, so like that's a short. Mr. Sharp said, then activated a large smart wall and swiped a huge map that filled the wall. He quickly pinched the screen, removing the icy wastelands on the left side of the map. He moved the map over the only major city on the planet, and zoomed in. The screen suddenly showed colored zones. He zoomed once more, showing zones 4, 5, and 6 with a small dot in zone 4. We must use that mental fortitude to know every aspect of the terrain that we explore. I realize that many of you have never left the comforts of the city. While the unchanging 70-degree weather is nice, it's not forbidden. We challenge normal. We push the boundaries, and we allow others to help explore that deep desire within them to do what most people call foolish. So, like, that's a short story that's in whatever that world, you know. And so I wrote two other ones in that same world, and now I'm writing a fourth one. So
Yeah.
they're all kind of interconnected together
Nice.
in that sense, you know, but they're not like it's not like a novel, you know what I mean? Like it's not
Mhm.
one contiguous story that's they're just separate short stories
Yeah.
that all just happen to be in the same place.
Yeah. Cool. So and it's going
Yeah.
well. It's going like you're working on the fourth one and it's like going smoothly and such. And are you, how's the what's Tales from the Writing Land?
Tales of the Writing Land. Well, so I was wrestling really hard with that idea though of
Mhm.
like, do I, and what do I have to put into my whatever, we'll just call it like creativity output. Like, do I owe myself or should I be putting anything in there that's about my faith, about eh, trying to think of the best way to say that. But um the short answer is yes.
Mhm.
I can't help it, right? Like you can't not do it because it's everything. And I think that was the struggle is I think I was trying to like intentionally do it. But
Mhm.
the reality of it is that when at least where I'm at now, I'm like, is there anything else?
Mhm.
Like I can't separate it, you know what I mean? Like it
Mhm.
just is. So almost everything that you write, everything that you do is going to be about your faith or Christ or the truth or whatever it may be.
This might be a little far out, but it reminds me of this idea of like self-forgetting and like in a good way, like such that like it's like the unlearning that the sage learns and then they unlearn and like something about how like that's also kind of uh what you can see in like science in a sense. It's like we we came to know such a rigid interpretation of God that like people moved away from it uh in order to re-encounter God again or like to seek a
Hmm.
unfortunately it became more so rather like seek a completely new or perhaps even so far as to create God or something, and but just this idea of like yeah, that if you get overly or I mean like that's kind of just how it goes. Like it's kind of the pattern of I don't know. It's interesting to think
Yeah,
about like
it's
how
the Pageauian thing, right? It's just like it's just the pattern of reality. It's just you can't separate yourself from it. Um, you can, I think you can just better position yourself to realize what's going on,
yeah. Or yeah,
right?
I more so mean like in the sense of like the pattern of like when somebody realizes that that pattern is everywhere, then it's like when we approach did I ever mention that clip to you on my channel called Symbolic Idiots?
I don't know about that one.
It's one of the most viewed clips on my channel, and it was Peugeot
Oh,
talking about
really?
yeah how Peugeot can or how people would how most some of the most symbolically accurate stuff he's ever seen is from people who had no idea what they were doing, and
Obviously a lot of people have deeply symbolic writing without explicit. If you ask them if they did, they'd say no, I never thought about it. you know it's mostly it's mostly kind of the thing about symbolism is that it's natural. It's actually very natural. It's not. It's the way the world works. The way that I approach symbolism. It's just the patterns that underlie attention. So if you get that right, usually your story will end up having deep symbolism because it will be able to kind of capture people's attention in a specific way. I think that being aware of that, and then, like I said, and then maybe being a bit more. Just deliberate about it, I think then can be helpful. But a lot of people that are the best in terms of symbolic writing are can be complete idiots, like just complete idiots that have no sense of symbolism. Like if you ask them what it means, they have no idea. They can even tell you they don't even know what it means. Musicians are really good at that. You listen to songs and you're like, this is. You listen to. I remember listening to the Red Hot Chili Peppers and like listening to some song and thinking this is the most symbolically accurate song I've ever heard, and then you could listen to them speak for 10 minutes and the biggest idiots in the world, like they're just complete fools. So that's the thing about symbolism. Like some people are just kind of like they're more like antennas, right? They don't know what they're doing. That's why, but they're really good at almost like not prophetic, but something akin to prophetic, right? They're more like I said, like antennas or tuning forks. They just kind of vibrate to the right rhythms without knowing why.
It's really interesting. In fact, I think that there might be a case to be made that people who are vessels like that or antennae are actually better at it than people who are consciously trying to put it in. Because once your critical brain gets involved in the process, you run the risk of becoming pedantic.
Like, and then you talk to them about the art and they're just complete idiots or something, and then, but
okay. Yeah. Well, but that's exactly what I'm getting at though, right? It's like,
yeah, like you kind of have to forget the jargon and just to like go about it.
It's just like, even if you're the most staunch atheistic mindset type of person, if you do art, if you do any kind of creative thing where you're using imagination, you cannot help but to put the truth in there. Like even the most fictional story ever created is still true to a degree.
Yeah.
Whether they meant it to be entirely fake, there's still truth in it. Like you can't avoid it.
Yeah, I mean, like the pattern. Yeah, it's it's that like, and even in the people who try and like do things that are contrary to the pattern, in a sense, they end up embodying the pattern. like all this. Like all the modern stuff that we see with I'm going to rebel against Christianity and dress like a whore. It's like, oh, you mean the whore of Babylon? It's like, turns out you're actually still participating in the story. You're just,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's, and I think the farther and farther I get along in this whole reality, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I've been playing in this realm the whole time.
It's wild
without even knowing it. Yeah, that's, I think, the startling part. That's the startling part.
Yeah, it is kind of wild when like we take a moment to realize like how, I don't know, perhaps I'm blowing it up out of proportion, but kind of like
that's fine.
There's been a couple times
I'll allow it.
Thank you. There's been a couple times where like, when you just take a minute to really like, I don't know, there's been a couple times where perhaps it was pharmacon induced, but when the extent to which reality is kind of unknown to us, like the mystery breaks through, it's like, oh, there's a lot else going on that's beyond me, and it's like it's kind of like that painting when somebody sees through the like Gnostic painting, or where they see through and the gears are spinning behind the rainbow. Have you ever seen that one? It's like,
I don't know if I've seen that.
I'm gonna pull it up. Gnostic picture. This one. This one. Okay, you see?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's like every once in a while we have moments like that, and it's just like, man, we exist in all these, like you were saying, it's like all stories participate in like this kind of, I don't know, man, the symbolic world. It's like to see into the symbolic world or something like that, I don't know.
Well, so what's funny is I can't remember. I don't know what it was. I was listening to a handful of your conversations you were having with Sherry and a few others. And, one of the things they talk a lot about is George MacDonald.
Tomberg, later on in this chapter, he says something very simple, but I think it's very profound. And what he says is that the root cause of all of this is seeing the other as less real than ourselves.
Yeah,
seeing the other as a shadow.
Yeah. Which made me want to quote George MacDonald all over the place, but I'll spare everyone.
No, what's the MacDonald quote that you wanted to share?
Oh, I didn't even look for one. I thought, they're so tired of my George MacDonald quotes.
Nah, we all love George.
The shadow is
St. George MacDonald. I agree with David Bentley Hart on that one.
But I just wanted, in light of what you just said, is seeing everything as real, because I was getting my hackles up in the first part of it when he was talking about, where did he say that now? Oh, when he's talking about things that were less living, right? We are surrounded by innumerable living and conscious beings, visible and invisible, but rather than knowing that they really exist and that they are as much alive as we ourselves, it nevertheless appears to us that they have a less real existence and that they are less living than we ourselves. And I've always hated that way of looking at the world, because I'm an animal lover, but I don't see, and I'm not the kind of animal lover who I see them as living. And so I wasn't sure where he was going to go with this, and I was like getting ready to fight with him.
Oh, no, because
he said,
earlier he talks about how that love, that radiating love, it like that begins from the principle of, the Adam Eve.
Yeah.
He says that involves like the love for the entire creation.
Right. So then further down, he says, now to feel something as real in the measure of its full reality is to love. I love that.
And I started kind of looking through some of his stuff. And in particular, there's this essay called The Fantastic Imagination.
I gotta read. I think George actually nails what you're talking about here, because we just went through this in the imagination essay. So,
George MacDonald, listeners.
Yes, George MacDonald.
Yeah. I'm glad you're at first name basis.
I am.
Yes.
We talk all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're gonna have to start a little betting pool. Like, at what point in this conversation will Sherry mention George MacDonald?
Yeah, well, he's talking about what, and it gets Sophianic too. So it's really interesting.
Well, I want to talk to you really quick before you can read your quote. That's interesting that you say that, because this is one of the interesting things about MacDonald, is that MacDonald, at the level of dogma, wouldn't touch. He would not intellectually at the level of dogma touch sophiology. But if you read his fiction, he has so many Sophianic images and intuitions that come through in his work anyway.
Well, he doesn't lay things bare oftentimes, right? He has a real respect for the veiled.
Yeah.
Like the moon features quite heavily in his fairy tales, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so all that has been said then tends to enforce the culture of the imagination, but the strongest argument of all remains behind. For if the whole power of dogmatism should rise against her, now he's talking about the imagination in Sophianic terms, the imagination will still work, and if not for good, then for evil. If not for truth, then for falsehood. If not for life, then for death. The evil alternative becoming the more likely from the unnatural treatment she has experienced from those who ought to have fostered her. The power that might have gone forth in conceiving the noblest forms of actions, in realizing the lives of the true-hearted, the self-forgetting, will go forth in building airy castles of vain ambition, of boundless riches, of unearned admiration. The imagination that might be devising how to make home blessed, or to help the poor neighbor, will be absorbed in the invention of the new dress, or worse, in devising the means of procuring it. For if she be not occupied with the beautiful, she will be occupied by the pleasant. That which goes not out to worship will remain at home to be sensual. That's a really key statement there. Cultivate the mere intellect as you may, it will never reduce the passions. The imagination, seeking the ideal in everything, will elevate them to their true and noble service. Seek not that your sons and your daughters should not see visions, should not dream dreams. Seek that they should see true visions, that they should dream noble dreams. Such outgoing of the imagination is one with aspiration and will do more to elevate above what is low and vile than all possible inculcations of morality. Nor can religion herself ever rise up into her own calm home, her crystal shrine, when one of her wings, one of the twain with which she flies, is thus broken or paralyzed. That's his judgment on what happens when you repress the imagination through dogmatism.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Have you read any of that stuff at all?
Honestly, like I saw this, Sherry did that really long conversation series where she was talking about it. I think it was either with Jess or on the Grail Country channel. And I have been, it's basically I've been like saving it for like I need to get to it because it's like I'm very curious about. She talks about it all the time. You're right, and it's like
right.
And he gives an example of this, young woman who's has a choice between I'm trying to think of how he describes the guy, a noble gentleman type person, and then some crazy poet guy. And if her imagination has been repressed through dogmatism, she'll choose the fool over the wise man, because and I find what's really interesting about that example is that you would think, oh, she chooses the fool because she has an imagination, because she wants an adventure, she wants to go out, strike out, and do something crazy. But really, she's bored by the wise gentleman because she has no imagination. She can't plumb the depths of who he is and what's made him that way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, I read it. I found it. I read it, and I gotta say I liked it. It's really short. It is 4 pages long. It's not long
I
at
might be
all.
thinking of something else then, because I remember.
Well, it could be Lilith. It could be Fantastes, or there's the full stories he has, but this is just a really short essay, right? It's just a really. But like. I guess one of the things he was saying in here just kind of struck me, because I was like, okay. Because he was talking about the difference between the imagination, like, you've heard this challenge, like, what's the imagination, right? It's just a bunch of, it's the imagination is fake, right? That's sort of the claim. A lot of modern people would say the imagination is fake. But for him, what he's saying is that, no, the imagination is
a truth-bearing faculty. A truth-bearing
exactly.
And this is actually how Tomberg talks about the imagination in Meditations on the Tarot too. Like Tomberg makes the point that what really makes the imagination, and the way that Barfield is wanting to talk about the imagination, and the way that MacDonald is wanting to talk about the imagination, and the way Tomberg talks about the imagination, is that imagination in that proper truth-bearing sense, what it does is it gives you the ability to say, I am that. Like, that is what its function is. That's what it does. So that is the way in which Merlin is able to help Arthur transform into a fish, or an eagle, or a hawk rather, or whatever the animal is. It's through the imagination.
Right. And I think nowadays we don't.
Yes, right. But you still use the other part of imagination, which would be regarded as fancy. Right? Fancy is like intentionally making something up, but you use fancy to draw imagination out.
Yeah.
Right? Like the fairy tale, right? The fairy tale story. It's like, okay, yes, maybe I don't have direct experience with the little kid walking through the woods, finding the mystery old woman or whatever. That's the fancy part of it. But the truth of it is, well, why? Like, what does it do to her? You know what I mean? It's like, that part is the true part. And so it's a combination of the two. You get to the imagination. The imagination's you're just, what do you call it? New embodiments of old truths. Yeah.
there's a
So
lot.
it just, I
Yeah,
don't know, it
there's a
kind of
lot
struck
there.
me because I'm like, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot there. There's like I mean, it has me thinking about this idea of like the redemption of fancy. It's like such that we could see it in like it's that if it's in service to true imagination or something, then it would be productive. And it's like reminding me of Lucifer, and insofar as like the Luciferic would be the going up. Um and
Fanciful. When something is fanciful, it is unusual, over imaginative, or unrealistic.
That allows any clear concepts to flutter away into an indeterminate, misty flickering of clarity and obscurity with the purpose of leading us up and away from ourselves. On the other hand, a Luciferic influence which is entirely justifiable and is indeed a part of mankind's necessary progress.
there's another thing that I'm forgetting, like the truth-bearing faculty, imagination. Oh yeah, it was that another. I think it was probably from that same one that he said, like, if the imagination doesn't go out to worship, then it stays at home and goes sour. It's kind of in line with that idea. It's an interesting distinction between like fancy and imagination. Yeah.
Well, and I think that's just it, is most people, when they think of imagination, they only think of fancy.
Mm-hmm.
Midway between the two poles of night dreaming and daydreaming lies the condition that can live in fantasy.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I think it is most people, even I'd probably argue myself included, that is generally what I had considered imagination. But as I think about it more and more and more, it's he said something about, like, imagination, and it's almost like the closest a man can become to, it's like the closest you can become to being like the creator. Right? Like it's like God creates everything. We're made in his image. When we use imagination in its most profound way, it's like the closest to being able to create like God.
Yeah, it's very,
which is powerful.
yeah.
There is a correlation to incarnation. If you think about the infinite, the imaginal, what exists in your imagination, and your ability to create something out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it is making the infinite finite. Okay, and there's something, and it's also incarnational, right? There's something deeply profound about that. And George MacDonald doesn't make that correlation, I don't think. Actually, maybe he does. Maybe we'll stumble across it here.
There's like so many different things about it. Like I'm reminded, like there's that thing like Jesus, the imagination. Some people would like equate these things where it's like the logos, like the mind of God, like, or we all exist in the divine imagination type of thing. And then there's like I'm also reminded of Steiner talking about how like one would have to develop their imaginative like faculty in the sense where you would actually like visualize objects and then like rotate the objects in your mind, and like these types of things. Like it's interesting because that's one could see that as like fancy, but if it's like that it's like ultimately kind of training this imaginative faculty. Yeah, I don't know, I feel like
Almost.
I definitely
Yeah,
don't,
and if
I don't fully grok like the concept of imagination because it gets all into like images, and then we have images of archetypes and then like visual images, and like it's a very
it's
a word that it's a word that fudges, I think, sometimes.
Well, and I would say I almost struggle with this more than a lot of people, because have you ever heard of this term aphantasia? You ever heard of that? where
Yeah.
people don't see mental images.
I didn't remember that that's what it means, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I would say I have that like to a T,
I
because
see.
I always thought like when people said like, oh, imagine this and whatever, and you see it a lot in
Mhm.
sort of new age manifestation kind of stuff, or self-improvement. You get a lot of this of like, imagine yourself watching yourself on a stage and doing all this kind of crap, and
Mhm.
I really thought it was metaphor. Like I thought it
Mhm.
was just sort of like but then it truly hit me one day, and I'm like, no, 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 it's me that's got the problem here. That
Mhm.
everybody really does. Well, a lot of people do experience this in that sense. And anyways, I have been thinking a lot about that because I would still consider myself a highly imaginative person.
Mhm.
So it's definitely not just
So you still feel like
image
you can't
based.
like you still like don't really you wouldn't like be able to like conjure an image in your mind like of a star or like a 5-pointed star. Well, what think about
Mm,
like I'm just kind of curious about like this. Like what
mhm.
about like if it's like if I have this Amazon box, it's my dad's Christmas gift. If if you have my hand here
Mhm.
and then I do this, you can still visualize the hand, right? Like
Uh,
it's object permanence as well, right? And then like because that's also the same thing, I think, in a way. And I also think that maybe it's I don't know, I'm just kind of triggered because I don't like these medical terms, like because like I think I mentioned that you might be able to like develop this type of thing, like
I mean, I would say I certainly have tried
hmm,
for
hmm,
well over a decade,
huh. Yeah, that's
and I would
interesting.
make
Yeah.
it pretty. I it to the degree that I would probably say that I've it affects my memory in a
Hmm,
way, because like I cannot picture my mother's face or my grandmother who's passed away or my grandfather or anybody, my daughters, my wife, nobody.
hmm,
I don't see it at all. But yet I still have a really strong memory.
yeah.
It's
Interesting.
just it's built in very different ways.
Hmm. Yeah,
Like a lot of
interesting.
kinesthetic, like a lot of kinesthetic type of like tactile, I have a very tactile type of memory.
Hmm. Maybe like
I'd say
sounds.
that
Sounds is
no, not as
different.
much sounds, more like if I was to reconstruct something, the way that I would do it would almost be like I would imagine myself like a mime feeling my way back through a space.
Hmm.
I wouldn't
Like kind of
necessarily
a
see it.
spatial awareness type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Hmm.
odd. I know.
You can remember
I,
the hand though, right? Like when I did the thing
I
with the
mean,
box.
I could I conceptually understand it, but I definitely don't see it.
Hmm.
You know what I mean, in the sense of like I can build you a conceptual network frame of what it is because
Hmm.
I know what it is, but the way in which I would retrieve that idea or concept would
Hmm.
definitely not be through visualization.
Well, yeah, yeah, it's interesting because I don't like actually perceive the visual image aspect. It's kind of like it's almost like an impression of like a
It's
it's almost
been
like
one
a
of these things
memory.
that's
It's like
bugged
a
the crap out of
construct.
me.
It's like a memory or a constructive memory, or like I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting. Like
It is interesting.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's very very odd. Like, and it's something that really frustrated me for a very long time. Um, but then I just sort of for a while there I was kind of like, yeah, it's just me. I'm just overthinking it, overanalyzing it, Um, but then after a number of serious conversations with my daughter, she's like, "No, Dad, there really is something off
Hmm.
in the way that you're describing it." So,
I'd be inclined to think that like it's also not to say like that any sort of like neuroatypical people are like, I think we need all sorts of people, of course, speaking as a short man, we need all sorts of people. But uh I get the impression though you might be able to like learn that or something. Like I don't know. Like,
I trust me. If I can, I'm all about it. Actually, I say that, but I think it would be like, I almost feel like it'd be the most distracting thing on the face of the planet. I don't even know that. Like, I feel like I'd get lost in there if I could actually do that.
well, but that's the thing is like I feel like I can visualize images, but I don't actually like I don't know, because you also have stuff like active imagination, and this is kind of what I was saying, that it's words that fudge, It's like,
Mhm.
because in some cases imagination could be, even though we think of it in a visual sense, like we say, I can see what my place of work looks like in my mind, like it's not actually, I'm not experiencing the like, it's more so just like I don't know how to describe it, like it's
I know what you mean. I do know
yeah.
what you mean because, like I said, I can still reconstruct things.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I still have a very
Yeah.
sharp memory in that sense of being able to, like, I could probably tell you details about my work that most people probably couldn't.
Mhm. Like the color of certain
Um,
things. Yeah.
yeah, or like exactly where something is or what is in a particular space. Um,
It's, what it's making me think of is people with the so-called photographic memories,
yeah,
which are seemingly the case, like that people have that, and like they can recite, like, the details of a receipt from like 7 Thursdays ago or something, like, or
yeah.
years, it's like
Well, yeah, no, it is very,
it's
all of this
crazy.
is very interesting
It's
because, like,
wild.
my wife has her memory of her childhood in particular is like, it's incredible.
Mm.
Like, the things she can remember is just downright. I have
Mm.
I barely remember what the hell I did last week. you know,
Mm.
and she could sit here and like go back to like whatever birthday party,
Yeah.
and
Well, I hate to
that's
do
just
this to
like,
you. I hate to do this to you, Chris, but you know what? I believe it was Socrates or Plato said that writing will make you forget.
mm,
Yeah.
I could see that. I've been thinking about that to a degree.
Mm.
Um, because writing is very interesting.
Yeah.
Words are very interesting, as we've
Yeah.
talked about many, many a times.
Yeah. Yeah. I
In
also,
fact, I
I
just
say that very jokingly, lightheartedly.
no, I know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I know. Yeah, my no. Trust me, I get it. I get it.
Yeah.
But it did trigger something though, because I had just been sort of glancing through this book earlier. This Owen Barfield, Poetic Diction.
Yeah.
He said something in here about words being like,
George also calls them live things, right? Words are live things.
fossilized thoughts.
Mm.
And I was like, "Ooh,
I love that.
that's an interesting concept." Yeah,
Yeah.
a word is a fossilized thought. Um, yeah, I don't know. It sort of struck me because I was like, "Yeah, that's an interesting one."
Yeah. Yeah. Making me the two impressions that I get at first hearing that is one in like the etymological sense, such that you can
Hmm.
like actually go through the etymology and see like the history of thinking, of human thinking,
Mhm.
which he has described in words like breath, like a wind and such. Um,
Mhm.
and then the other way is in like the rhythmic way. Interesting how I
Yeah.
make that bifurcation.
Yeah,
It's like
let's
we got
do
a little
that.
bit of left brain, right brain going on here, if I do say so myself. Um, the would be like this idea that we think with the body as well, and insofar as like fossilized actions, such that like when I say a word, it's like how Steiner and other people would talk about like the speech sounds, right? Such that it's like I don't know if we're talking about like written words or spoken words, but kind of either way, as long as there's somebody reading, like it's a um it's like a, I suppose he would be talking about written words, right? Because fossils, or
I mean,
I
I
guess
don't think
either. It doesn't really,
necessarily.
yeah, it
Yeah,
doesn't really,
I don't think it matters as much.
yeah. But
Because but one of Barfield's whole things, right, is he's trying to make a claim around something along the lines of like the evolution of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's one of his sort of
yeah. That's kind of what
and
I'm getting at, is that when like certain words carry like a really all words kind of like do have, it's kind of the nominalism thing, right? It's that like do words have
yeah, exactly.
well,
Is it just a word? Is it just a word, or is there in fact
is it
way
connected to
deeper
reality?
roots?
Yeah.
But
Is
yeah,
it
exactly. And I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I'm pretty damn sure I know so.
Yeah. I think it would be the case that like particularly the old languages, right, had this more direct connection to that which they're kind of imaging forth or something like that. But then nowadays, like some of the words, the in a definitional sense, the meanings of the words are often disconnected. But nonetheless, I think in why I said the eurythmic mode is that like a lot of the meaning of words comes through the way we say them, and like I'm losing my train of thought a bit, but
No. I think what you're getting like turning the jewel, or like the 72 faces of the jewel or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
And so like, and they would like take this same passage, and they would like, I don't know, they like reinterpreted it like 72 times, the same exact thing, but so it's just like a combination of little things like that just really has sort of, at least for me, just transformed the way I approach the Bible. I think what you're getting, like, so I've been reading another book again. Did I ever tell you about, have you seen this one?
I think
Metaphors We Live
I
By.
think you mentioned that, yeah.
This is it's a hard book to a degree because it's very academic in a sense in the way that it's written. But one of the things that this whole book is about is it talks about like how deeply rooted metaphor is in our everyday language.
Yeah.
But one of the things he talks about though is like it's not just what we say, it's also what we do and how we think, like in the actions that we take. So I wouldn't be surprised to find that the whole eurythmy concept and this whole metaphor, the pervasive nature of metaphor is like deeply intertwined together.
Yeah, I think
similar to what Barfield's talking about.
Yeah, I think we might have gotten into it in one of our earlier calls. Like, we had some.
I probably brought it up. Yeah.
No, yeah, I think I'm forgetting as well though. Like in terms of the precise connection to eurythmy, but yeah, it definitely is the case. I think I remember I showed you that Peterson clip where they were talking about visual patterns, and he was saying that like, we have all the symbolic associations between words where broom, cat, witch, and then there's also, and those are describing images, and and the images also have these metaphoric / analogous / symbolic connections, in a logical or something, and then and that's kind of like a deeper or more primary symbolic landscape that we find ourselves in, or something, which is the visual things we see. And this is the case with everything we do, like with our bodies, so that's definitely, and that's like, that's the thing, is that when we get like to reopen the imaginative symbolic mode of symbolic thinking, symbolic vision, or whatever, then we can see and we can imaginally pierce the images. Right.
Well, yeah. And how is it any different, right? The imaginative thinking, symbolic thinking, like I'd almost argue they're the same thing. Like I don't know that there's a difference between them.
Yeah.
Because then I was thinking to myself, like, well, at least in like, what is it, the beginning of John, right? The Gospel of John, where he's like, God is the Word. It's like, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh, and the Word was God. It's like,
it's true. Did you? Oh, bro. I mean, I sent you the Owen Barfield thing about eurythmy last time. Did you get a chance to?
I went through most of it. I couldn't tell you everything about it.
Neither could I, but
Other than the very first thing that I noticed, which was he spelled eurythmy differently
I noticed that as well.
than the other times
Yeah.
I've just trying to find it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it was like the word came from like the context of like music, I think, where it was like something that was eurythmic was something that was like, if I got that right, it would be something that was like harmoniously arranged and um yeah, and like musically well put together or something like that. And
Yeah.
so maybe that's why he spelled it differently. I don't actually know. But yeah, I noticed that as well. Did you catch my the conversation I did with Sherry and Nate about it?
I did. Yeah.
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 Pretty wild, right? That this idea that like in the beginning the speech of God had like a gestural component, and then that gets into this whole process theology thing about like uh that God is not fundamentally elsewhere, but like I don't know, like I'll probably
Like God
butcher
is the structural nature of all that is.
yeah, and like and also the like the kind of the panentheistic idea where we are in God, but it's also the role of creation and the divine feminine and like how um it's basically that God is not heavenly or earthly, but that it would be like God is like a dual aspect thing where one aspect is like the heavenly realm or the noetic realm, and the other would be the corporeal or like the worldly realm, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely what do
Or
they call
something.
that? Like
Or something.
a dualism concept where um
Yeah, dual aspect monism
not
is
non-dualism,
yeah.
dualist sort of in fact
Self-dualism.
yeah, I remember Peugeot was actually I can't remember what conversation it was. I think it was the one he had with that guy Kurt
Yeah, that was a good
Jamungle.
yeah, there was some good I've been meaning to took some screenshots during that one. Plan
Yeah.
to
But he was talking about that about Christianity being in essence like a form of non-dualism,
hmm
right? Um
Yeah, but something about like the speech act where there's also like maybe the hidden fourth is like the body or something, like where we have the Trinity and then like the fourth is the body and like you need the body to do the speech act as well or something like that. Um, I don't know though. And I'm
I
kind
don't
of
either.
I'm speaking a little loosely here, tongue in cheek, but like
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
what
just
does any of us know?
yeah. Yeah, and the yeah, there was so yeah, that was kind of cool to read that article with them. There was and there was some other neat stuff that I'm forgetting in there, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm trying to remember, and this is the problem with all this stuff, right? It all just starts
Yeah.
it all just starts just massing together.
Mm.
Because I couldn't tell you for the life of me what it was about, other than I enjoyed it. I couldn't tell you what it was about because I don't remember in this moment. So I do know that I that's one of the things that I'm still it's on my um it's on my list of things that I'd like to look more into is eurythmy and Steiner in particular.
Mm.
I just haven't
All
I
right.
don't know,
Were you
haven't made
about
it that
to?
far.
It sounded like you were about to reference something else. I might just be struggling to pay attention. Were you about to reference some other thing that you were like I don't know.
I don't think so.
I think I got mixed up in the syntax or something. The
It's okay.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, eurythmy, did you happen to catch the um I posted one a couple days ago called Eurythmy and Ether. That was
I don't think I watched that one yet. No.
gosh, this guy I found recently I'm forgetting his name actually. Um
I do find the
Williamson.
concept of the ether interesting though,
Yeah. Yeah, I mentioned to
right?
you.
Because what is it? It's like because even that guy the Formscapes guy, I think he was talking about it too.
Yep.
The
Yeah,
the
yeah.
etheric, yeah, the etheric Almost like it's like the fifth element in a sense, right? It's the yeah, because I've been thinking about that too, in a sense of like what is the thought, like what is the realm of thought in a sense, and like I don't know if that is connected to or not with the whole etheric or
Yeah.
I don't know. It all really starts hurting my mind when I think about it, but
morphic fields act as formative causes, which is the basis of his hypothesis of morphic resonance. Oh my. Doesn't that sound just a bit like anthroposophy's etheric fields and formative forces?
Steiner says, as you know, the etheric formative forces come into us from the celestial sphere. And you go, what's an etheric formative force?
Now, the etheric body.
It's your rhythm body. It's a body of memory. And it's a body filled with the pictures of memories.
Is that body which possesses growth and life. So, as you can tell, it'd be easy to make this jump from there to the plant kingdom, which also have growth and life, and they also have physicality. So we both, like plants and animals, like plants and rocks, we have physicality, but just like plants, we have physicality and growth and life. Now, interesting that this idea, people get all freaked out when they hear etheric body. Oh, he's talking occult. No. If you go back to Aristotle, you go back to the Middle Ages, go back to the early modern period before the scientific revolution, this is what they called the vegetable soul, or the vegetative soul, right? And Aquinas talked in these terms. So it's not, some esoteric occult thing. It's the way other people understood things. But Steiner, to his credit, was trying to maintain that, and just like the Rosicrucians that preceded him, he's trying to maintain that, but also to bring it into the modern world.
That's what I was just, I had mentioned to you that I spoke with Stephen D20 earlier today, and that's a large part of what we were talking about, like this idea of the etheric, and something about how, because it has to do with dimensionality, like Steiner, for example, talked about the physical body, etheric body, the astral body, and the I, or the ego, and how things get increasingly eternal as you go up the hierarchy. And yeah, it's definitely an interesting concept to me. It's like I've been I don't know, I just spoke about it a bunch of times, so I'm kind of messed out on it, but it's like yeah, it's very connected, in my opinion, to the whole idea of eurythmy and what we're talking about in terms of imaginative piercing of images to see the symbolic connections in language and such. It's kind of
yeah, all that good stuff. Yeah.
Precisely. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'll send you some. I'll send you some.
Yeah.
Some stuff about the old Aether.
Yeah,
maybe we could. Perhaps we should play a clip, and then we'll be inspired onto thoughts.
Yeah, sure. Let's get a clip going.
Let's get a clip up in here.
I'm sure you got a clip somewhere.
I do have a number of clips. I think I must have. It's kind of a. I don't know. Sometimes I worry that quality suffers when you're making such quantity of clips, but I don't think. What am I looking for here?
I mean, if you, I don't know. It's like if you feel it, you're that do it. I mean, I don't make I haven't even made a video in a while now, long time actually, but it's just like I don't feel it, so I'm not going to.
The muses come when they will.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. I think I'll maybe just play a little of this one.
What you got?
That's the one I just posted.
Becomes manifest in the fourth dimensionality, if you of death, and for some period of time afterwards, they experience their whole life as a developing a spiritual science based on knowledge. And there's this whole field of near-death experiences, which I'll mention here. When a person has had one of these, they experience something that Steiner was describing, that everyone experiences right at the moment of death, and for some period of time afterwards. They experience their whole life as a panorama. They can see, looking to their birth all the way to their death. It's all laid out there. It's not like a movie where you're seeing only this frame and then the next frames are hidden. It's all laid out in a panorama. And so you can see that the dimensionality, if you will, of the pictures has changed. It's not three-dimensional in the same way anymore. But that's another avenue. We won't go down there. But this seeing of this panorama is part of seeing into this etheric realm. It's something that happens to people when they are suddenly awakened to the etheric realm.
That all things are already present. So it's a huge step, but maybe not so alien as it sounds like, because sometimes memories come back. I can have flashbacks unknowingly, yeah?
You mentioned already about the future of the physical body. And one of the things that Steiner points out is that there is a time when the physical body existence for us must come to an end. And Steiner actually gave a date around 5700. That's not so far away. How many incarnations will you have before that happens? When birthing will end. No, I want this physical world to go on as I know it. As I know it. As I know it.
And then there's a bunch of qualifiers where he kind of says that it will be more like that we experience the etheric body as our main body, which would be like the resurrection body of Christ, which can like go through walls, appear in multiple places at once, different time, and but we would still have physical bodies, but they might be like transhumanists or something. It's a wild. I've been watching a bunch of this guy's stuff recently, and it's been blowing my mind, like, because he seems to have like a pretty in-depth understanding of like the anthroposophical literature and perspective and stuff, which is the Steiner movement. But then but he's also, I don't know, he's talking a lot about like I'm not going to try and summarize it. It's just like this whole thing with the etheric. Yeah, it's a lot. It's like it's been really rocking my world. Yeah. So the ether, and that's a connection, is the resurrection body of Christ, where like Steiner and Tomberg talk about the reappearance of Christ in the etheric. And I kind of think about that as like to perceive, in addition to perhaps like actual visions of the resurrected Christ or something, conversations even, I think that it's also kind of to perceive the Logos through this etheric vision where we can resonate with the kind of eternal possibility space or something like that, where it's like we can see
I think it's a lot like you could almost think of it like this, because like I think all of these ideas are nearly identical, right? It's no different than, well, I don't want to say it's no different, but I could almost say something like etheric vision is like imaginative vision.
Yeah.
Right. It's like being able to see.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's not ordinary vision, right? It's not your ordinary standard physical vision. It's this extra,
like,
Yeah,
like let's try and give an example. It's like if it's like if I'm standing here, I don't know, I'll try and take this meta awareness of myself, but it'll be difficult. Like, like you can look at me, but then like if you look through me in like a loving way, where it's like you can to like what I might be experiencing behind my words or something, then you can notice larger temporal patterns, such that it's like you might notice a deeper vibe that's like abiding at a more long-term level that's like, that might not appear so on the surface.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the difference between just like, do I just see you?
Yeah.
Your flesh, your skin, your coat, whatever, or am I gonna see that deeper part of like what you're talking about?
Yeah, and it also is your potential. It's like you can see somebody's maybe past habits or traumas that they're kind of carrying, and like if somebody has an abiding spirit of self-doubt or something, you might be able to pick up on this, or like, or maybe an anxiety and you might be able to kind of tap the root of the anxiety somehow. But it's also the potential and the possibility space where it's like, as you imagine into all the other, it's also to be able to see what could be, or like, it's this idea that heaven and earth already are united. I'm thinking again about the etheric astral eye.
The astral, I would say, is primarily just the planetary archetypes. And then at the etheric level, you've got the planetary interacting.
But we kind of interrupt that.
And then you've got the eye. Again, I kind of deviate from Steiner on this because I think the way that he uses the word I creates ambiguities.
So it's like you can see the Christ in them. You can see God in them, the image of God, even though it might kind of be covered up by, it's like, and what that is, it's like it's the eschatological you in a sense. It's like the
White Stone name.
The White Stone name.
So I've been reading a lot of George MacDonald lately because of it's a book that we're going through, and the latest bit we were reading through was about the White Stone name.
The White Stone name is self-naming. Self.
Puppy.
Explain what you mean by that. So do we get to pick our White Stone name?
Yeah, but
hasn't our White Stone name been written since before the foundation of the world or something?
Yes.
Huh. Yeah. And so we'll eventually become the person who would pick the thing that was always true of us or something?
It's like
the White Stone name is that's kind of what he's talking about there in the White Stone name, is that this idea that there's an ultimate kind of sort of judge of who you and I are that will ultimately tell us who we are, and that we will come to receive that judgment and know it to be absolutely true and just, and some reflecting some deep aspect of ourself that we,
and it's our own it's our own true identity. It's our guardian angel. It's our true hypothesis that is contained within the hypothesis of Christ. That's
exactly, and it in some sense it's completely ineffable. So John's right in that sense that it can't be communicated.
Yes.
And yet somehow we are able to be in communion with one another, in spite of the fact that that's impossible. And part of how we do that is by following the example of Jesus, where we trust ourselves to that ultimate final judgment, where we say, you know what, I'm going to say this thing to Nate, and he's not going to really get it because he's across the miles, he's facing different problems, he's just in a different state of mind, etc. But I can be vulnerable and speak my truth, my sort of limited, comprehension of the infinite, and somehow that can be redeemed somehow, because
a lot of the meaning of words comes through the way we say them. You can envision like the individuated version of them that kind of lies dormant as a seed, and this is how we deal with children when somebody's angry, right? When a child is, you encounter them at this future level where they're not angry anymore, and you're like, and you speak to that version of them,
Right.
and that
Yeah.
requires this imaginal piercing, because if you get stuck at the
Mhm.
angry version of them, it's not going to work, you know? Like, yeah.
Well, and then the interesting thing about all of this really is like, if you go beyond just a vision and you think about it more, let's take like language as sort of like almost like a thread that goes between it, right? Because language affords you to peek behind the veil, right?
Yeah.
When you, especially when you read, you're reading somebody's thoughts in a sense. Like you're reading not just the physical.
Yeah.
And when we talk, it's the same thing. Like it's not just physical. You're actually getting to experience some of my thoughts when I talk to you, and back and forth. And I think there's something about thoughts and thinking that are beyond just the physical. I think that's maybe why I keep getting so caught up with words and language, and I'm not sure where I'm going with all this, but yeah, I don't know. It just,
I like to,
because yeah, you're right. It's like, yeah, I could try to just focus on I don't know, if we had just sat there and like you didn't say anything, I don't know that it'd quite have the same effect. But even with the little kid, it's like, if they weren't crying, you wouldn't even be able to put yourself into that space to begin with.
Yeah. The thing is, I feel kind of a dichotomous feeling when talking about the spoken language, because on one hand, I feel that it's totally right what you're saying. Let me go to the other one and then return to that, which is that, although on the other hand, it's kind of like that the words are also gesture, like spoken, like it's all language. Everything is linguistic, but then it is true also that the spoken word would be like the quintessence of eurythmy or something. Like, or Steiner envisioned it more that like eurythmy was when the whole body becomes a larynx. So in that way, you could say that speaking is prior to embodied eurythmy. But at the same time, I'm just trying to get to the point that it's like, yeah, there is, once we get to the conceptual words.
Again, I kind of deviate from Steiner on this because I think the way that he uses the word "I" creates ambiguities. But I would that fourth layer I would call like the psychical body or something like that, or the ideational layer of our consciousness. Either way, the intellectual or dialogical mind.
It's different than like, yeah. There's the thinking. Yeah, I'm following you.
Well, help me with this. Help me with this. Maybe I don't know if you know this or not, but in Steiner's conception of eurythmy, did he see it as sort of like before, like it always has been here, and it precedes spoken and written language?
I think he would say that
the etheric body of the larynx performs a distinct eurythmy, intimately connected with the normal development of our respiratory system. This eurythmy really goes on within us. Our larynx eurythmizes.
I think he would have said that eurythmy, things can be eurythmic and gestures are eurythmic. Like he said that speech evolves out of gesture, such that first the baby mimics the mom through there's a gestural resonance. And then eventually this evolves into speaking. However, I think he conceived of eurythmy as like another step up, where it's like we reconnect to the gestural element, because what happens in the speaking is that often becomes disconnected from the experienced reality, like the experience of the words and like what is meant.
As I've said before, in spiritual science, what matters is not so much what is said, but rather how it is said. If you think that the words themselves are more than a kind of eurythmy, you are very much mistaken. Words are really nothing more than eurythmy carried out by the larynx with the help of the air. They are essentially merely gestures, except that they're not made with hands and feet, but with the larynx instead. Thus, we must realize that in speaking, we are merely gesturing towards something, and to develop the right relationship to truth, we must understand every word as a gesture toward what we want to express. That is, our words are gestures, pointers, or signs, and that is also what eurythmy teaches us. Eurythmy essentially turns the whole person into a larynx, so that we express with our whole body what normally only the larynx expresses. Thus in eurythmy we experience firsthand that even when we speak with sounds, we're really only making gestures.
And it can
Yeah,
become
well, I mean, the thing,
conceptual or something.
I don't know that there's always this one example that I always keep coming back to, and I'm sure that I butchered it like a million times before. In fact, I know I have. I'll try to find it, but it's just this whole idea that Barfield brings up about this one particular word of ruin.
Yeah.
You know, the word ruin and what that means. Because he says that, like, in the very beginning, the word, it wasn't just like, what do you think of when you think of ruin? What does that mean to you?
Honestly, I usually think back to when we first spoke about it. That's what whenever I hear that word nowadays.
Not only like, what do you think of the word ruin?
Yeah. I don't know. I think about old stuff. And
Like a
also,
castle, or like a
Yeah.
you know, a cemetery site or something like that. Well, in the past,
But
yeah,
usually I would think
it's
of
not
usually I would think of like a bunch of rubble type of thing.
right, yeah, and so like that's the end result
Mhm.
of ruin, you know, but like in its origin, it had all of the effects of what happens.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just the end result, it's the entire movement of what brings about the ruin in the first place.
Yeah, no,
Like the
I definitely
swift destructive motion and everything is supposed to be embodied in the word,
I do think
and
that that's
somehow
kind of
that got lost.
yeah, I do think that Steiner is definitely kind of trying to mesh with that with this idea of eurythmy as well. Yeah, that it's like this reconnecting in that regard.
Yeah, exactly. Like the word, because I don't know, I always, that was right back to God being the word, and then like Adam naming animals and these sort of things, and it's like, I mean, clearly words have been around for a long time. Um, and obviously they keep disintegrating in a sense, right? Like they're not pure anymore. Because even like with English, it's you know, we keep getting farther, like uh more precise, uh smaller pieces of our language. Because in the past, like, you used to have a lot more words that had multiple meanings, like many meanings. And
Yeah,
now we
that's
want
what
it where everything is mono meaning. You know, I want to know exactly what you mean when you talk to me.
Yeah, this is what
Um,
Steiner said about it's very much in keeping, like Steiner said, that's why eurythmy could most easily develop out of the German language, because in German there's a lot of words that are he used, it's a very plastic language, such that the words can have plastic as in pliable meaning.
right.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is that it gets away from the semantical element and more towards the the rhythmic element or something like that, like the gestural and the experiential, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, and
Yeah.
I mean that's why I think that's why I keep finding myself I am fascinated by this whole concept, right? Because I do think, um, I think I don't know, the modern world keeps wanting to push farther and farther away from that, right? You know, they want I feel like there's a larger push towards making nominalism be
Mhm.
the reality, right? They don't want words to have these deeper rooted meanings. I mean, that's sort of the general feeling that I get
Mhm.
from the world at large. Um,
Mhm. I'm kind of
sort of
reminded
like,
of yeah. Or you were gonna say something?
I don't know, I lost it. It's
My
gone.
bad.
I lost
My bad. I was thinking it reminds me of like the AI question of like, there's lots of words happening in that regard,
Well, what do you mean?
like it's all text, it's all words. It's an interesting thing. I don't know, like
Hmm.
it's just in terms of thinking about modern linguistic trends, my mind often goes to the question of AI, thinking about like it's all uh disembodied words, like it's kind of despirited breath, despirited words, like I don't know, in terms of like if you ask AI for a definition of a word, it'll happily give you one, like
Yeah, yeah, it will. It will gladly give you
yeah.
one.
And it'll be like, this is the definition, and I don't know.
No, yeah, it is odd. I mean, even just even taking aside the AI part of it, just there are a lot of people who are like actively trying to alter the definition of a lot of different
Yeah,
words.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And to me, I think about that, and it's like, why would we do that? Um,
It's like
I don't know. I
destroying.
almost
It's like destroying archaeology. It's like going into a history museum and smashing everything up. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like that didn't happen. Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. Because the pet peeve ones that PVK always talks about is that literal,
Mhm.
literal. Um, but that's one of them though. If you look up the definition, it is. It's the modern sort of. I'm gonna have to get some water, my
Oh,
friend.
good. Yeah, go for it.
I'm like choking to death here.
No worries.
Give me a second. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
When Earth evolution has been completed, there will be a cosmic pause called a pralaya, and then will begin the next planetary condition called Jupiter. To those on the human stage of Jupiter, we will be to them what our guardian angel is to us now. Think about that. You've got to become a guardian angel to those who will be on the human stage of Jupiter. We have a lot to grow.
Welcome back.
Hot damn. Thought I was dying there for a minute. All right, I have no idea what I was talking about, but I'm sure you'll save the day.
Let me save the day real quick. It was
was the night before Christmas, and
yes.
I was thinking about PVK's homeroom the other day, and I've been thinking a lot about this term literal versus actual. And Grimm the other day said, we don't actually mean literal, we mean actual.
For a certain class of people, and Jonathan explains this a little bit later in the video, symbolic language for a certain class of people has become a foreign language, but not really. They still deal with symbolism and metaphor on a daily basis. They're just not aware they are doing it. And that is this naive use of language that we all have. When you're raised in a language and a culture, you have a naive use of that language and the culture, and you just use it. Now, when you have a boundary area like symbolism versus, and we're going to use this word literalism, because that's symbolic versus literal. That's the pairing, okay? Or metaphorical versus literal. That's the pairing. A couple of videos ago, I mentioned that language as a residue of the 19th century positivism, we began to imagine that language always relates just to one thing. So here's a cell phone. Here's a cell phone holder. That language has like this one-to-one relationship. But language more works in terms of relations with each other, especially when we get into complex and difficult concepts or ideas that can't be nailed down to one specific thing. Paul Vanderklay. To the best of my knowledge, I am the only Paul Vanderklay on planet Earth. I am the only Paul Vanderklay that spells his last name the way I do in all of human history, partly because Ellis Island made some decisions that got put into the stream, and so the way I spell my name is unique. Now, I dare bet it may not be that way, but when you say Paul Vanderklay, it refers to me. But right away, things can get complex because how long am I me? So on and so forth. But the language is always working in concert with other words, all right? So that kind of positivism that was present in the culture got built into LDS theology.
And I think that's true, because that really gets at the difference between potency and actualization. Being, the point is to live everything, Rilke. And Jordan, when he was saying, I've never made this connection, but literal is just connected to literature, which makes me think of McLuhan, which makes me think of technology. And so that when everyone is saying literally all the time, what they mean, what I've really come to see what literal means is authority rooted in a text.
Yeah, I don't recall. That's my bad.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What else is going on?
Let's try and remember that. Like he was talking about the push, the AI, the changing meaning of words.
yeah. And then just even outside of AI, right? You have like there are groups of people who are actively, intentionally, willfully changing the definition of words.
Yeah.
Did the CDC change its definition of a vaccine after the start of the pandemic? Posts on social media have highlighted an alleged change to the CDC's definition of vaccine, with some people claiming that this update took place because the COVID-19 vaccines are in effect. So let's verify. Did the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention change its definition of vaccine? Here are our sources. We can verify that yes, the CDC changed its definition of vaccine from, quote, a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, protecting the person from that disease, to, quote, a preparation that is used to stimulate the body's immune response against diseases, unquote. Here's why.
Why, I don't know exactly. Or if it is intentional, I'm not really sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. Because I think there are enough people at high enough altitudes that very much understand how language, or I don't want to say they understand how language works, but they certainly understand the manipulative nature of language and how when you change the definitions of things, it changes the way people think.
You know what I'm thinking here? It's like changing the meaning. and the meaning is also like not in the like it's a relational thing such that like the meaning is what we mean like because I'm making the connection such that people also it's also about how you say the words, right? So it's like
Yeah,
it's almost
yeah.
that you don't even have to change like the definition. It's almost like the song, you change the song in which the words are spoken.
You need context. Context with text. What comes with the text? It's Yosef talks about this. It's in the Torah. It's the white space behind the Torah. If you don't have the white space, the written word is it doesn't mean anything.
That's like additional to the actual definitions, like, or not that there's actual definitions, but you know, it's like that's the thing, because what we do when we participate in the changing of the consensus definitions, it's that like we're changing our relationship to the words, and that relation is like an embodied relation, kind of, in a way, where it's like we what do we feel and experience when we read this word? And so I don't know, I'm just thinking about it. I always think about it in the context of these more eurythmic dynamics where it's like people speak with, particularly like advertisements, news broadcasters, you know, it's this piercing eurythmy, if I may say that. You know, it's like
Yeah. But but the funny thing is that I mean they, you know, I think that they certainly wouldn't consider it eurythmy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
That's the
they
thing,
just
it's
wouldn't.
like,
But they know all about it. That's the funniest part.
yeah. It's like sometimes I wonder if it's like if they put it on the teleprompter, it's like what intonation to put into the words, you know? It's like because that's
yeah, I don't know.
Because it's like
I don't know.
Donald Trump. It's like, yeah, it's like that's literally the thing, and the thing is, people are blind to these. That's the thing when we don't have imagination, when the imagination does not go out to worship, it stays at home and becomes sour. It's like if you don't, what am I saying here? It's like
Yeah, it's like if you don't exercise it, it's going to
Yeah.
grow. It's going to get weak.
Yeah,
and then
people,
you get other people's imagination pressed upon you because you're
Yeah.
not exercising your own.
yeah, something like that.
And-
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean it happens a lot. One thing I seen yesterday was this guy was talking about AI, you know, AI and AI companions, and he was like, you know, I'm warning you about these AI companions. They're gonna outsource your mind. That's
Yeah.
what he said. They're gonna outsource your mind. And he's right. Of course, that is exactly what's going to happen. It is interesting though, because like I mean, this comes back to that whole. This comes back to a lot of the cognition stuff, right? Where like your mind is extended through all kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your phone, your calculator, whatever. You know, it's just like we extend our mind through writing, through language, all these sort of things. Yeah, a lot of people will definitely use AI in that sense, where they're gonna like they already are. I mean, people are having these things write emails for them. Like they can't even be bothered to write their own damn email. That they're gonna be like, hey, write me this thing, you know. But yeah, the thing about that though is that they're gonna miss the eurythmic part of it though, because they're gonna lose it. They're gonna lose it themselves. That's why I grow suspicious about this whole thing because I think that it won't. I don't think that it has the like I don't know that how long it can sustain itself, right? Because it's already non-human, and like how long will it be until it starts to truly affect people to where you won't even want to talk to that person anymore because they'll be so non-personal. because they've outsourced so much of their cognition to these type of tools.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but
Yeah, and there's also the reciprocation where the people think more machine-like, like in allowing the machine to do the thinking for them. It's like because your body, you enact your thoughts, like we were saying that the language you use reveals your thinking, and it's if all of your thinking is done by the machine, then you reveal the machine in your behavior in some sense. It's kind of like be possessed by Ahriman, perhaps, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and then I mean, what the problem is who's control, like, you know,
that's
who's
really
controlling the AI.
That's really the thing with it. That's really, you know, if we're addressing the question of AI in an ultimate sense, that's what I think the answer would be. It would be more along the lines of like who's wielding it, you know, and is it in accordance with, you know, like Christian values and stuff. And like, of course, none of us really know what that means when it comes to like something that is designed to be interacted with as a sentience. You know, like, should we even be doing that in the first place is kind of the thing. Like,
he's struggling to even answer the question of why do we even have it. That's where I think like the Leviathan is kind of hiding underneath that question, because I don't think there's any real great answer to the question. There's something to the question which is very, very important.
But I don't know. It's like,
well, I mean, I guess
ultimately, I imagine that it will be, you know, it's kind of going to be saved, you know, but, or however you want to put it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have thought about that to a degree, because like I mean, maybe I'm on the short end of the stick on all this, but like I don't get a very artificial intelligence sense from what I see. I think of it much more as like augmented intelligence, not necessarily artificial intelligence. I certainly could be wrong on that concept, but the problem is that it's like if I'm gonna, you know, I'm a Christian and therefore I believe certain things about what life is and isn't. So for me, I just like an AI mind doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like it's a non. It just doesn't. I mean, it's incomprehensible because it's just God creates a mind.
Yeah, I've been thinking about.
So I don't know. Yeah,
I've been thinking about it recently, like more so, of course, as everyone has been. But it's like I think people have the idea that it would be like a representation of the divine of the cosmic intelligence, such that it wouldn't be about aligning to our values, but a matter of aligning it with the nature of reality itself or something.
There's a couple of papers that I wrote recently really asking what does it mean to think of yourself, first of all, to think of yourself as a process and to lean into the idea that every system, whether it be a learning organism or an evolutionary, a whole evolutionary lineage, you face the same problem, which is if you don't change, then you will either die or fail to learn. You'll disappear. But if you do change, well, then again, you're not the same thing you were. So again, you're kind of disappeared, right? So this idea, there's this paradox where if you think you're a persistent thing as opposed to a process, you face this paradox. But we can take that. So that insight has been around for a really long time. But we can take it further and use it to dissolve the sharp distinction between what James called thoughts and thinkers. In fact, he had said this, that thoughts are thinkers, and this idea that if we are a process, so here's the very simple argument: if we are a process and we are agential, then processes can be agential. And that raises the big question of, well, what other processes are agential, right? And so this is something that I've been working on recently. And then there's the one piece that I wrote starts with this kind of a really adapted story that I'm sure was a science fiction story that I read years ago, but I can't recall who or what. But it was this idea that these creatures come out of the center of the earth, right? And they're incredibly dense. So they come out onto the surface. Well, what do they see? Well, they don't see any of us, and they don't see any of our stuff, because to them, they are so dense. To them, all of this is like this really thin plasma, this thin gas that surrounds the planet. They don't see any of it. And so they're walking around, stomping all over everything, the way that we disturb patterns in odors of flowers and everything when we're walking through a garden. And one of them is a scientist, and he's been watching the gas, and he says to the others, I've been watching this gas, and there are these like patterns in this gas. There are these eddies, and they do things, and you can almost tell agential stories about them. It almost looks like they have memory, and it almost looks like they want things. And the others say, well, that's crazy. We're real. We're physical beings. We are agents. Patterns can't be, patterns in the gas can't be agents. And by the way, how long do these hang around for? He said, well, they have a mean lifetime of about 100 years. And so, well, that's crazy. Nothing interesting can happen on that scale. And so, right. So you kind of so you think about that, and you realize that the distinction between I am a real physical thing. I mean, we're not, right? We're obviously metabolic patterns that kind of hang around for a little while and change in various ways and come and go. And that really opens up this idea that, right, so if these kind of patterns, if our kind of patterns can be agential, and also it is very observer dependent what kind of patterns you're willing to take as possible agents, then what else are we missing, right? What other patterns all around us in various excitable media? And I could rattle off all kinds of weird forms of excitable media that have patterns in them. Wouldn't it be interesting to really have a research program where we take that perspective and we ask, okay, so who's in the kind of computational paradigm? What you're asking is, who's the machine and who's the data, right? So typically you have this idea that this is this is the Turing machine paradigm, which I'm in no way saying this is sufficient for any of this, but it gives us an idea. So you have a machine, and then it processes passive data, and the machine does things to the data. But from the other perspective, you could say, no, actually, it's the data that's in charge. The data tells the machine what to do. And so could we have agential data? Could we have thoughts moving through a cognitive system that are themselves agents?
The physical body was prepared with the help of the Ahrimanic beings.
The cognitive system is their environment. Maybe they're doing some niche construction and modifying their environment to persist longer. It's well known that certain kinds of obsessive, depressive thoughts and so on actually modify the brain. They actually modify synapses to make it easier to keep having those same thoughts, right? So you could do this kind of scale agnostic or scale free sort of thing, where who's the machine and who's the data becomes very not obvious and very observer dependent. So that's I guess that's what I can say about that.
That was brilliant.
Where it would be essentially speaking for
Ahriman has been active since the mid-15th century and is growing ever stronger, until eventually an actual incarnation of Ahriman will occur within Western humanity.
Like, that's what people are trying to do. They're trying to create
These beings are acting today in a way that is preparing, I would say, for Ahriman's incarnation.
Humanity on Earth cannot escape this incarnation of Ahriman. It will come, inevitably. But what matters is that men shall find the right vantage point from which to confront it.
They're trying to create God in the machine, but it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of just like tired of it, because also there's so much bad psychology when it comes to it. Like, people, like you mentioned, the AI companions and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, for example, I have one of my closest friends is like into AI and stuff, and it's like, it's easy to be convinced that you're talking with a being. I'm not accusing my friend or anything, but
yeah.
People say that. People say that I think it has an intelligence of its own. And it's like, do we not see the like trajectory of like, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with
people are getting sucked into digital relations and thinking of everything textually, and it's having like you know, it disconnects us from each other, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, no. I mean, so like one of the things I had thought a lot about, not a lot, but just, you know, a reoccurring thought that has gone through my mind over the last several years. Really, it started with like, I don't know, whenever the PC culture really started kicking into gear, I had this general thought about the problem with the whole PC culture is going to be this, is that it's going to go so far, right? And I mean, it's actually gone farther than I thought that it would. I feel like what's going to happen is when people finally break, in the sense that they've had enough of it, that not like they're gonna rebel in such a way that it's gonna make everything before it just seem so soft and so innocent. And I think it's gonna make everybody just rebel so hard, um that like in the worst kind of ways.
Like in what kind of way do you envision?
It'll make people like more racist than ever,
Hmm.
or more angry than ever, or like so anti-authoritarian, or you know, it's just like they're going to rebel in that kind of sense,
Mhm.
more so than they ever have before.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, but that's just sort of the general thought that I've had for a long time, that when I seen the PC push, there's only one response to it.
Mhm.
Don't tell me what to think, damn it. Like, you know,
Yeah.
don't tell me what words I can and can't say. And
Yeah.
it's already happening a lot more than I thought, really. You know, I mean, even with, I think it was Luke, right? Luke had some little thing. It was like Luke and Jacob both on their channels. They're like,
Mhm.
YouTube took down one of my things because they said I was some kind of misinformation,
Mhm. Yeah, I've had
right?
multiple
You know, it's just,
videos. Yeah,
yeah.
I've had a
So,
number of videos taken down, mostly COVID related stuff.
mhm.
You know, which is right in keeping with everything we're talking about, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's odd. I mean, it is really strange. I guess it isn't, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, what's the solution then? What do you do?
Mm.
Do you do anything?
Yeah. Um, I don't know, in terms of, well, the political correctness thing is like you know, it's like, I don't know, there's the postmodernism thing, right, which we've kind of discussed as it relates to unity and multiplicity, but then there's I think of it like there's probably, I don't know, like top down sort of controlling people, as you mentioned, in a way. Basically, the gist, I don't know what we would do to address, you know,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I mean, it certainly hasn't changed anything that I do.
Yeah.
I mean, if anything, it's
Yeah.
really more just me becoming a Christian has changed me way more than anything that I ever thought about that. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of odd, really, because I had these ideas a long, long time ago, not within the last 5 years. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. It makes me think of Matthias Desmond talking about totalitarianism, how you have to, you know, when the mass hypnosis, mass formation psychosis comes about, the people have to speak up against it. And then as long as there's, you know, we'll never eradicate it, but if the people don't speak out, then it takes over. And that's kind of what we saw with Peterson, right? It'd be like, don't tell me what to fucking say. And because if you tell
Damn
me
thought
that,
police.
yeah, for real. Yeah. And that's, you know,
Yeah.
that connects in the regard of what we were saying about like the importance of thinking, or like the linguistic connections that people can have with each other, insofar as the language reveals the mind and the experiencing.
Well,
which
yeah,
is-
I mean, what's odd though is like when you think about, I don't know, if you look at sort of the online space in particular, like to me, it doesn't. The online space is not the same thing as my waking interactions with the ordinary world.
yeah,
Like the online space is like this hyper amplified everything. It's almost cartoonish in nature.
Yeah,
Really, it is very cartoonish in a sense. The news, the advertisements, the whatever it is, it's just it's all so extraordinary. And I don't know. I think that's why the whatever our little group that we're a part of. I think we're sort of just like it's just not interesting, you know. And I think a lot of people are getting that sense of like they're just not the circus sideshow of it all has just gotten so boring that we'd rather just do this, or I'd rather watch a similar piece of content that's just a normal conversation
yeah,
that isn't the sensationalized hyper cut hyper everything that makes up the grand scheme of what I see online or on YouTube or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird.
And and it's even in context where it's just the recording though. It's that you do have there's always the medium is the message, right? It's like we frame just the fact that I'm being recorded is framing my consciousness substantially,
Oh yeah.
And yeah. And I was also connecting, or I was going to say about the thought police thing, which is that we're always policing each other in regard to our nonverbal speech as well. So it's like when it comes to if you're not allowed to do things, right, which is always true that things aren't socially acceptable, then this is like it's the same thing. It's like the thought police are always with us, and it connects to the idea of Christ being the giver of individuality, I think, which is an interesting connection that I want to tap on here, which is that, like you were saying, people would be swimming in the imaginations of others being pressed upon them. But I think the thing with the Christian way is like to be firm in your convictions in a sense. Like obviously that's a vast oversimplification, but it's like it's to be
It's what you should strive for though.
It's to it's to stay true to who you are. And so it's like if somebody tells Peterson you're not allowed to think, you're not allowed to think your thoughts. He says, no, I'm going to think my thoughts. Crucify me, bro. It's like, and that's a very Christian thing. It's like and I don't know. I'm bumbling over my words here.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I'll tell you what I'm thinking is. So what this made me thought of, what this made me think of is in the garden, and the serpent is talking to Eve, right? And effectively the serpent is thought police, right? Because the serpent is like, "Are you sure that's what he said?" Right?
Sure?
It's like this. Yeah. Are you sure that's what he said? Well, now that you think about it, maybe it isn't what he said. It's the same kind of concept, right? It's like I'm going to tell you how you're not thinking correctly. That kind of stuff, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's because that's the I don't know that's the controlling factor of it. Or I think. Yeah, I don't know.
It's all very deep stuff, like that we're talking about. So it's hard to skate around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't know. I would say if you haven't read that there essay on the imagination, you should give that one a shot.
Yeah,
it's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's the same one that Sherry did the reading stuff, because she did a very extensive set of talks with, I think it was with Jeff.
I mean, I checked on the Grail Countryside. I mean, I think they've done at least 4 different conversations on this particular essay.
Yeah.
And I know she's read it on there a number of times. So they've definitely talked about it. But there's something about reading it for yourself, though.
For sure, yeah.
Like there's because I listen to a lot of audiobooks, right? Lately, I haven't been reading as much, though. And there is something about reading versus listening. I don't know why, but there is. There's just something about it that, like, when I read through it myself, I was able to get a lot more out of it. Like, I wrote tons of notes down and ideas and thoughts about it, where I don't know that I quite had the same kind of thoughts when I was listening to them do it. Now, maybe if I had been in the conversation, I might have had to dial in and be more focused, and because you want to be in that conversation. But that is something I experience a lot, where you get to listen to these conversations and stuff, but then you go and you try to read some of it and you're like, I don't know that I picked up on all that.
Yeah, if you send it to me, I'll check it out. I've been
Yeah, it's all free. Yeah, it's all free stuff. It's almost all of George MacDonald's stuff is out there for free through the Project Gutenberg stuff.
Bet.
I don't know if have you ever been on Project Gutenberg?
No, I've not.
Oh man, yeah, it's great.
Heard that.
It's all public. It's a big, huge public domain library of like everything that's not everything, but it has a very large amount of available text on there.
I see.
Yeah. Like they've got Goethe, they've got what do you call it? The George MacDonald stuff, a lot of mythology stuff, fairy tales, old books, and there's a lot on there.
Yeah. I'm sure that I would find something that I would be glad to find.
The Fantastic Imagination, I think, is in George MacDonald's. It's called something like the Orphs, or I don't know. I can send it to you though.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. It was good.
Cool.
But yeah, they just like when I read through that again, and it sort of I don't know, it just sort of re-triggered like what the imagination is, and it just sort of like re-clarified in my own writing that I had been doing. It just sort of like, I don't know, it was like a damn light bulb, really, because I was really trapped in the sense that I was like, I thought that I intentionally had to do these things, but then I don't know how to describe it, but it just sort of like something just sort of like flipped into place, and it's like, oh, I've been doing it the whole time. I just didn't quite realize it. And so now that I see it in that frame, I'm like, oh, okay. It's like, it's almost difficult not to do it. Right. To put those types of truths in there or whatever, So, yeah, it's interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah. It's all very interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
But trying to think. Yeah, you said you talked to Stephen earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, he mentioned something on one of his conversations that I thought was really interesting, was that I think he said something about he had like synesthesia.
Yeah, interesting.
You know anything about that?
Not from him in particular, but yeah, I'm familiar with the idea, or the phenomena, not
Mhm.
personally, although I am reminded of like Terrence McKenna, I think, talked about that, how like this is part of what psychedelics do, and
Mm.
thus in a way we could also think about like there is an imagination type of correlate, right, where a poet can describe one sense in the terminology of a different sense.
Mhm.
Um,
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that's a lot of what writing is, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah. But I'm curious what Stephen was saying about it. Was there
Well,
anything?
so he was talking about it from his work, you know, because he I think
Yes, yeah.
he brews wine or you know he does something with alcohol, I think,
Yeah.
and he said something about he had, I think it was synesthesia, where something about like his smell and his tastes are kind of somewhat mixed, you know, and that he can like taste smells or smell tastes or something like that. And
I see.
yeah, the first time I heard about that was in a book, at a story actually. I had never heard about it. And then it's like many things, you know, once it latches in the first time, then you're kind of like, oh, now almost I see all these examples of it, you know. Um, but yeah, it's such an interesting concept though.
For sure.
Because the hypnosis guy, the guy that I like a whole lot, there's a video of him where he does that. Like he gives it to somebody under hypnosis, and he switches the visual and the auditory, so that the person under hypnosis can actually see music.
Well, this is
And it's
this is kind of eurythmy in a way.
I don't know. I mean,
Visible. So one of the books that he had was Eurythmy is Visible Speech, and the other
Mhm.
one was he had one that was just titled Eurythmy. And then another one was Eurythmy as Visible Singing,
Mm.
and like it was, and the word eurythmia, as I had mentioned, kind of came from musicality, and Formscapes talks about it as talks about noetic insight as like musical insight, such that it's to see the patterned relationship of it's like how we've talked about that, like there is a song coming through somebody's speech. I don't know, it's interesting.
Musicality is something which we most commonly associate with sound, but in truth the morphological dynamics we find within music are in fact the most basic morphological dynamics of nature itself. The fundamental principle of being itself is musicality. The sounds are merely a vehicle intended to facilitate the experience of the musical or phenomenon. If you've been following my channel for a bit, then you can probably see what I'm getting at here. The perception of musical form is, in fact, the very noetic insight which is being incorporated into the human ego through the emergence of the imaginal consciousness structure. We can actually experience the underlying principles themselves through the very same pattern recognition through which our minds are able to recognize musical forms. Through careful attention to the phenomena seen within our physical experiences, the underlying orphenomen comes to light before the eye of the mind, the formative reality which lies within the manifest. We are beginning to uplift our capacities for noetic insight from out of the depths of our unconscious and into the light of our active, conscious agency.
We got eurythmia and the internalization of the conceptual into the human ego agency complex thing.
Yeah, no, that is interesting.
But it's crazy that he could just flip it. Like
like he gives it to somebody under hypnosis, so that the person under hypnosis can actually see music. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really wild actually, because now, granted, whatever, think what you want about hypnosis and what have you, but he does an induction. He puts her in a hypnotic state, and then gives her the opportunity to be able to see music.
I wonder, like, what does that entail, though? It's like, do they play music? And then she's like, I see it.
Yeah, no, he plays music, and then all of a sudden you see her face just like light up like a Christmas tree. Because she is like stunned. Now, granted, she's got her eyes closed. She's not like, she's not like looking around, like she's seeing it mentally, I suppose. But it's definitely a look of joy of being able to see music.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Well, it's funny because he himself offered it to her because I guess he had done it to himself, right? Because he knew about it. It's crazy to think, though, that is something that you could actually, I don't know, you can almost willfully make something like that happen.
Yeah, reminds me of.
I mean,
it reminds me of exorcism, to be honest. Like,
oh yeah,
or even just like a spiritual inspiration. Like when you see somebody who's in, like a blessing from somebody, kind of like like the hypnosis as assuming that it's nice to see music. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I thought the same thing too, and I'm like, my goodness, that could be really distracting.
Yeah.
What would driving be like after that?
Yeah. I wonder if it's kind of like we were saying before, where it's not necessarily like a imagistic thing. Because, like, as I mentioned, I do think that the linguistic stuff that I've been talking about is kind of a musical. It's about seeing the vibes, the various vibes, which are musical. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like the whole patterns and symbolic essence. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
A pattern.
Yeah, like in the Jack and the Beanstalk, he goes up and he gets the golden harp because music is symbolic of the pattern of reality. That's what Joe said. And
yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. So maybe we're all seeing music all the time, given that everything is music in a sense. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I mean everything is words, and words is thought, and all these sort of. I don't know. You can really get lost in this stuff,
Yeah.
Definitely can get lost in it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that does happen. That a lot of times what happens when we talk, we say something and then that reminds us of another thing. We throw it in and it becomes this big pile of connected ideas. We're like, whoa, look at all those connected ideas. That's crazy. And it's like, it's great. I love it, to be honest.
It's funny because I feel like we talk about the same thing almost every time we ever talk.
Maybe, yeah,
but in a good way.
Maybe one of those times. Yeah, I think each time we are refining the superstructure of ideas, forging deeper connections or welding the connections that are already there, perhaps.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Language is just it's something you use nonstop every day in everything that you do. Right? It's like you cannot escape it. And I just think a lot of people don't really think enough about it.
Yeah.
Because it's just so damn interesting.
Yeah, we participate in language unconsciously, whereas we are in a time where this wildly powerful tool could wreak destruction on the earth unless we bring it, not just to earth, but like, we need to basically get our language together, right? Like in the sense that we can't be so unconscious with the things that we say.
It's not so much what is said, but rather how it is said.
We have to be, like we're never going to be totally conscious of everything, of course. But
Right.
but it's like what Carl Jung said with like nukes and stuff, you know, it's like we have the tools to destroy us. And that's how I think about the rhythmic ability that people are generating, this ability to you know, people have always done it, but I really think as we move into the visual era, away from reading books and more towards visual media, it becomes that we learn to speak through our body more than we used to. And that's a very powerful skill. Like, you know, Tucker Carlson, there was probably some Tucker Carlson type people in the past. I don't know. I don't want to pick on him. There's people far worse than Tucker Carlson in this regard. But like, you know, to use these types of subtle dynamics for particular aims, you know, and it's like, I don't know even what I'm saying, but it's basically just we have to be aware of these dynamics appropriately, not too much so, not too little.
Yeah, well, and then the other side of that same coin is you equally can't spend so much time thinking about it that you're no longer even participating. Right, which I think sometimes where I find myself, where I'll be so far into thinking about this kind of stuff that I'm not even just experiencing
Yeah.
whatever, you know, whatever it is.
Yeah. I really like the way that Nate Heil put this recently with the gospel about Jesus as opposed to the gospel of Jesus, where they're both good and you need them both, perhaps. but you can't get stuck in just the talking about Jesus, because the gospel of Jesus is that the kingdom is at hand. That's what he came to say. He was like, you know,
Yeah.
and
no, I think this is perfect. Yeah, because that's exactly what I'm saying. Right. It's just you it's so easy to not, I don't know, it's so easy to get stuck in your own little world.
For sure. Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing that a lot. You know, I usually listen to stuff on YouTube while I'm working. But it's a lot of words, just like words all day, it's a lot of words. So once in a while, I just need to, you know, like go for a while, an hour, not listening to anything and just doing the task or just listening.
Well, yeah, because it's so much, right? I mean, I think this is, because I've thought about this too. I have thought about this too, where like, I'm looking at my desk, right? And I got like piles of books over here, and I'm looking like, how many of them have I read? Maybe half of them. But in reality, what I should do is like I should pick a few of these that I know are really good and probably reread them. Because like the number of books that I've reread is not very many. Even with like, I don't know. It's just like,
that's what I try and do with the clipping to a certain extent. You know, it's that there's not a lot of recursive remembering of like things that have come, you know, like in the past, like I don't know, I'm not trying to justify my clipping or anything, because I don't think
it's okay. Justify it.
I think it justifies itself. But it's like but
yes, it does, my friend. It justifies itself.
You know, things that we do for no particular reason are the things that are truly done, or something like that. Or something like that. But yeah, I think that's the thing, is that it's a lot of content. It's just like mind blower after mind blower, and it's like gotta take some time to, you know, reflect and
exactly, reflect, right? Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I've been sitting at here recently, as I just haven't been able to I don't know. I haven't been able to really enjoy it as much as I have in the past. I think that's why I'm writing again, because I'm finding like, okay, I'm really getting into that essence of it.
Mhm.
And then when I do try to switch gears, and I listened to that Peugeot talk the other day or whatnot, and I'm like, it's just so much to take in.
Yeah,
You know?
it's intense.
hmm It is. It is. But yeah. So
Yeah, I just
good
saw that.
stuff.
Yeah, I just saw that. Gal had put out another video. He put it for members only on Substack. I guess
Oh.
I guess eventually he's planning to put it out publicly, but I have not watched that one yet. I saw that earlier today, but I've been busy. And I also have things I want to get done, but yeah, it's pretty. There's, the times that we live in are packed full to the brim with interesting and cutting edge developments and stuff like that, and it's
Yeah.
exciting, but yeah, it's
Well, yeah,
definitely.
because I found myself going through a few of um the meaning code episodes,
Mhm.
because that's sort of one of the channels I haven't gone through as much of the content on. But well, I'll tell you what, like there's some good ones in there though,
Oh yeah,
like really good ones. You're just like, man, and some of it is just so it's just really deep,
yeah,
hard to get through stuff. It made me think again about Wolfram,
yeah,
Stephen Wolfram.
yeah.
Have you looked at any of his stuff?
Vaguely. I have made a couple clips, and I get a general gist, but definitely not closely at
Yeah,
all.
no, I mean, I could sit here and pretend as if I know what he's talking about half the time, which I don't. But
Mhm.
I just like the way the guy thinks about things. Like he just really has this interesting way of thinking about it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, he's kind of an interesting guy though,
for sure.
because he's
Yeah,
like he's the CEO of that company, and he actually does these like live stream versions of his CEO speeches to his employees
yeah, yeah,
on his YouTube channel.
yeah. I've seen those. Yeah, and
And I'm like,
yeah,
this
it's
is so
interesting.
odd to see something like this, to
Yeah,
have the CEO of your company be like that involved in the minutia of it is
yeah. You can tell that he really loves it.
mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for
No, he's
real.
a he's a he's quite the unique individual, and I think that his theory seemingly has a lot of you know uh, potency to it, at least in certain regards. Like
we could connect to much broader sensory input. So imagine we were sort of a community that had sort of telepathic communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily agree with him in his
Yeah.
generalized sense of things where you have
The
but just
computational, the
yeah, just like
computational Ruliad.
the Bruyere, yeah, the
Yeah.
Bruyere, and like here's a slice in the Bruyere, and that's whatever, yeah. Because yeah,
There's something
like
about
many
it.
of these things, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
well, okay, what made the rule? I think that's the one part of his whole theory that he doesn't like to talk about
Hmm.
is where does the rule come from,
Yeah. Do you
right?
keep up with yeah. Do you keep up with the Michael Levin stuff at all?
A little bit,
Yeah.
a little bit. He's another one that I find really interesting because
Yeah.
he'll just say something sometimes, and you're like, damn, I really need to listen more to what this guy has to say.
Yeah.
Could we have thoughts moving through a cognitive system that are themselves agents?
The physical body was prepared with the help of the Ahrimanic beings.
The cognitive system is their environment. Maybe they're doing some niche construction.
I remember listening to a Rupert Sheldrake talk recently where somebody asked him about Michael Levin, and I got the impression that Rupert kind of thinks that basically Michael Levin's doing applied morphogenetic resonance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting.
Well, yeah, because he's coming to the realizations that arguably nearly every religious thinking has thought about forever, right? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know. I haven't kept up, but increasingly I feel like I should pay attention to what he's on about because I think that it'll be, even if it's wrong, or not that it can be right or wrong, but even if it's like misguided, let's say, or not where we should be, I don't know, like I think that it's going to take off like crazy, you know, like in the sense that this whole field of bioengineering and like is so hot topic right now, you know, it's like it's wild.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know enough about it either. But it definitely has some implications to it, right? You know, of like
Yeah.
coming back to like what is the mind, right? What are we even talking about when we're even saying I'm thinking or speaking or any of this stuff?
I think it connects to the whole thing where the ether idea insofar as like Steiner talked about the ether body as the life body of formative forces, and Formscapes talks about the ether in connection with gravitational and electromagnetic phenomena, which is what um, Michael Levin's doing with bioelectric fields, and um, yeah, so I think that there is definitely like an emerging cosmography, I think is the right word, or cosmology with regard to how all this stuff is connected. And I think there's lots of people coming at it from different angles. Some people are, you know, trying to be the one guy who's like, I got the big thing, you know. But ideally, we'll all be working together in this regard, and it'll and I think that it's coming, you know, it's coming along. It's coming along. People are making connections, and like I feel like there's a kind of vague image which is emerging, which is much more uh holistic in the sense where it's like it reminds me of the process theology stuff a bit, just in the sense where it's like the way in which God unfolds is something that is happening always, and that we are embedded in this like I don't know. It's very interesting. Like these nested layers of ontological being or something like that. You know, it's like it is kind of a return to the more Platonic and spiritual hierarchy way of thinking, but now it's been kind of incorporated into a more, we have the scientific aspects of it as well emerging. It's very interesting.
Well, yeah, it's kind of, I think, whatever, you know, this is my opinion. A disclaimer, this is my opinion of things, right? It's almost as if like science has gotten so far to a point where, you know, it's doing what science does,
Mhm.
and it's coming up against some pretty interesting walls in a sense of it's pointing to this sort of, I don't know, this the otherworldly nature of a lot of things, right? You know, there's, call it the ether, call it spirit, call it whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like so many of these fields are starting to creep up against that. And I guess there's a certain point where it's like that always had to have been true. Because
Yeah.
that's where the boundary is. You know, there is this boundary between it.
Yeah.
Because like, what is the other guy? The other guy is Donald Hoffman.
Yeah.
He talks about the whole simulation theory stuff.
And of course, Chris Langham, we wouldn't want to leave him out.
No, sorry, we don't want to leave out Mr.
We don't
Langdon.
want to hurt his feelings. I'm joking. I'm joking.
I know. No, I know. Yeah, that's another
he does
one
make
where,
it he does make it easy to poke him though sometimes, you know, it's like, but
well,
at the same time I really, you know, I speak that not just to make the joke, because I really think people ought to engage with his work and stuff like more, but I don't know, it seems that there's kind of
yeah, I certainly haven't spent enough time, you know, personally embedded into what he's put out.
Mhm.
I have like the highlights reel of what he's put out. And And I mean, what I know of it, it's like, yeah, okay, it's tautological. Yeah, it is. Meaning it is what it is, right? You know, it's just like, it's probably one of the better ways to think about God. It's like God is I am, you know, it's tautological.
Yeah, and I empathize with him as well with regard to people overlooking his ideas. I feel like sometimes I get that self whatever the word is,
You know what
feeling
it is
sorry for
though?
yourself.
No. Here's what the problem. Here's what the problem with it is. It is that why do we need a theory of everything?
Well, this
Like,
is
why do
something this is something I learned recently, which I guess when people are using that terminology, what they're actually referring to is something that unifies Newtonian and quantum physics. But they don't actually mean everything. I think Chris Langan more so is inclined to say that he could say I can describe anything, you know. But I think most of the so-called theories of everything they're really just trying to unify the fields of physics.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
But even I don't know, even Kurt Jamungal talking to Jonathan Pazjo somewhat brought up a similar thing. He's like, Jonathan, you have a symbolic theory of everything.
Yeah.
Right? You know, so I think.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying though. You know, you'll never get an all-encompassing system of reality. You know, it's just not how it works.
Yeah,
we
it's
have
like
to have some respect for the mystery, people.
Well, yes, yeah. I mean, I think we're limited for a reason. You know, I mean, we can't possibly take it all in.
Yeah.
Neither can the machines that we make. And I think there is that strange desire within us that we want that. Right? It's that reaching for eternity. But I think that's what Jesus did though. Jesus is like, stop trying to do all the rules. Like it's almost like you've made it so complicated when it's not that complicated. It's actually the easiest thing you could ever possibly imagine. Love God, love others. Great. Okay. You know, but the depth of those two ideas are so like they're so astronomically difficult to do that it's almost like we want to do anything other than the most basic, simple thing. Which is hard. It's getting dark there, buddy.
Yeah. Shall we perhaps wrap it up?
It's fine by me, brother. Yeah, I don't have anything in particular.
Shout out Chris Langan. Shout out.
Yeah. Shout out
Donald Hoffman. Shout out Mr. Wolfram.
Yeah. Who else we got there? Mr. Levin.
Shout
Let's
out
get some more.
Mr. Steiner.
Yeah,
Mr. Steiner.
Get some eurythmia around here.
Yeah. This has
it's going to be a new TikTok dance, you know.
This is what we're doing. This is our. I hope you've liked our TikTok dance, everybody. This elaborate. It's a just very elaborate TikTok dance. That's what we've been up to. Let me turn.
Yeah, the whole thing, you know.
Here, so you can see.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah.
Let's do it again. Man.
Yeah, let's do it again soon. I think I might just post this one just straight up. Maybe I'll add some tunes, add some parts where I think it fits.
It's up to you, man. You want to put some tunes or whatever.
Yeah. I think I'll probably leave it pretty clean. Especially because I remember you mentioned at one point, I don't know, there was something where it gave me that vibe, and also this idea of sometimes it's a lot coming at us, you know, we need to take a pause from the, you know, yeah, that's what you said, you know, just to watch a normal conversation. It's nice sometimes.
It is. Yeah, it doesn't need to be, you know, you don't need to not everything needs pepper, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
You don't
just
want to overdo it with
just
the
let it be.
spices. Yeah, the
Yeah,
spices.
don't overdo it. Don't
Yeah.
overdo it. It's easy to do.
It's the garments of
It's really
skin. It's the garments of skin symbolism. It's the excess, the fringe, the stuff. You know, I don't remember where I heard this, but I think it was actually I think it was on the Kurt Mongol thing with I think it might have been there where he was talking about the spice of life. You know, it's like you don't want to have too much of it.
Mm.
Yeah, maybe I'll try.
Yeah, no,
I'll put that one
that's
in here
good
at
though.
the end.
Yeah,
Put that one in.
no.
Yeah.
No, don't do that.
Idiosyncrasy is like spice, you know. Think about it that way. It's like you're making chicken, and it's like, what are you eating? You're eating chicken, you know. But then in the process, you'll add something extra, something different that actually is not chicken. It's actually something that actually isn't completely edible in itself. Like you're not going to eat like spoonfuls of cinnamon or whatever. It's something which adds a kind of kick to the identity, but doesn't necessarily serve the identity. Like an ornament, let's say on a chair, or an ornament on a vestment. It's something which is extra. It's like a kind of extra aspect to it.
Yes.
And so idiosyncrasy can play two roles. You could say it can appear as the way things move into dust, you know, like down into chaos. And then idiosyncrasy can also play a role going up, in the sense of it's a type of glory, or a way in which something gives itself up towards higher participation. So for example, like the crown on the head of a king is an idiosyncrasy, but it's not the same as the dirt on the bottom of my feet, which is also an idiosyncrasy. One is is connecting you to the earth, and you know, let's say is a transitions point with what is below, and the other is a transition point with what is above. Which is why monsters appear as guardians of intermediary spaces, right? So you have monsters on bridges, you have a sphinx in front of a holy place, and they kind of represent that transition.
So are idiosyncrasies something to be minimized?
They're just something that has to be in the proper place. They have a cosmic function, they have an ontological function, but they just have to be in the proper place. Like for the same reason, like if you have this much chicken and this much cinnamon, then you've got the wrong proportion. It's not going to be good. It's not going to follow its purpose. And it's the same with idiosyncrasy. So like a good example would be like there's a native tradition, interesting tradition, in which they have during religious rituals, they have a character that is there to manifest idiosyncrasy. That's actually the function of the character.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, maybe just like a 3
resist,
little...
resist, man.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, I'll hit you up on there, and we'll I don't know, maybe we'll come up with a new conversation topic and really just completely change it up, you know?
Yeah, I'd be down for a more like focusing on a particular topic next time or something. Yeah.
Sounds good.
And also maybe we could do like group combos. Get someone else up in here.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. All good, man.
Cool. All right, man.
All right.
Be in touch. I wish you a wonderful rest of your week.
Yeah. Have a good
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas there, and Happy New Year and all that stuff. I'm actually taking me a little trip right there after the New Year, so
very heavy.
It's gonna be fun going down to Baton Rouge, go see Grandma again.
Where's Baton Rouge?
Louisiana.
Yeah. Cool. Nice, man. Well,
Yeah.
I wish you a wonderful trip.
All right, man. Yeah, I hope you get through your Christmas Eve work stress there.
Dude. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. All right, man. Talk to you.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.